And as we've been promising you, breaking news in the last few seconds, and we are hearing that inflation rose in the last month to 6.8%. So in July. So it's
it fell. So
it's still going up by 6.8%,
yeah,
but it's dropped from the month before. Liam Halligan will explain much better than me.
that syntax mess.
Yeah,
because it's a significant drop.
It is
more than 1%.
It's really confusing until you listen to this. Prices are still going up, but in the year to July, they went up less quickly than they did during the year to June. So what that means is that in May, inflation, the consumer price index, was 8.7% higher than in May 2022. The Bank of England's target is 2%, by the way. In June, it was 7.9, so 8.7 May, 7.9 June, 6.8% July. So we're still well over 3 times the Bank of England's 2% target. This is a feather in the cap for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. They will be crowing, they'll be talking about light at the end of the tunnel, they'll be talking, we're sticking to our plan, etc., etc. They'll be thinking if it isn't hurting, it isn't working, but they won't actually say that, though some people in the City of London will say that, and we'll all say, oh my God, you're outrageous. I don't think everybody wants to see interest rates not go up. A lot of our GB News listeners and viewers are savers, and they will want higher interest rates. But a lot of young families, a lot of mortgage holders, a lot of businesses with debt, 75% of business debt is on variable rate. They will want the Bank of England to pause its interest rate rises. We've had 14 so far. When they next meet on the 21st of September, I don't think they will.
No, the interesting thing with this, though, is, in terms of the Prime Minister's pledge, he promised to halve it by the end of the year. Well, that's under 5%. He's well on track for that now.
He's on track for that, but it's one of those things in politics. If it wasn't down at 5% by December, because, of course, he made the pledge in January when inflation was 10.1, if he didn't meet that 5% pledge by December, we'd say, oh, you failed. If it is 5% or below in December, we'll say, well, it's nothing to do with you, Gov. It's because of the Bank of England and global trends and all the rest of it. Look, I literally was just texting somebody very close to me. They said, what do you reckon the number is? I'll show you. I said 6.7 or 6.8. I wouldn't say it's easy to work these things out, but you can look at the various components of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and kind of put them together. The government will be pleased with this number, but I'm afraid the combination of 2 other things, the wage data we had yesterday, public sector wages up 9.6% during the year from April, May, June compared to the same quarter the previous year. Wages overall up 8.2%, including bonuses. That's higher than last month's inflation number. The Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee will still say there's a wage price spiral going on. They'll be saying the economy is actually bearing up quite well. We had reasonably strong growth figures that I reported on last week, certainly a lot better than the Eurozone and Germany. So I do think, unfortunately, for young families and for mortgage holders, people with personal debts, businesses indebted, I do think we'll see another rate rise on the 21st of September.
But with what justification? Because if inflation is coming down, and has been for several months.
You've been reading that bloke in the Telegraph, haven't you?
I have, yes.
It's that bloke on GB News.
He's not bad, that fella.
Bit gobby sometimes.
He is a bit gobby. But if it's all heading in the right direction, and we've got these 14 months, which we still need to see play through the system, why on earth wouldn't they just at least freeze it for a month?
You get that, Stephen. My kids get that. But unfortunately, we don't set interest rates. The Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee sets interest rates. Look, there is a very good argument to be made. I've been making it here on GB News in my newspaper columns since April. The Bank of England, hold your horses, cool your boots, hold fire, because interest rate rises, they take at least 12, probably 18 months to feed through into the economy. We've been raising rates since December 2021 when they were 0.1%, remember. They're now 5.25%. Should have said that earlier, having gone up from 5% earlier this month. They take a long time to feed through into the systems. Let's just wait and see what happens rather than carrying on raising rates, hammering the economy into the ground. causing what I think is an unnecessary recession.
Yeah. And, we're talking a lot about, what Downing Street will be thinking this morning. Jeremy Hunt likely to be out on the airwaves in the next sort of 45 minutes saying that things are going in the right direction. And yet 6.8% is still not great for you and me.
Still not great.
We're still paying more.
3% in America, inflation.
Or the Eurozone.
And I just said the Eurozone isn't growing as fast as us. It isn't. But their inflation's 5.5%. A lot of that is energy prices. We have particularly elevated energy prices in this country.
Do we have our core inflation figure then?
I haven't literally. I've literally got the number, and I've been
strips it out.
I've been enjoying the view, looking at you and Stevens.
No, because that's often the key when they're sort of defending the argument against.
Well, sometimes I'm a bit of a sceptic about this core inflation thing. Core inflation is inflation when you strip out food and energy. That's fine in a world where people don't eat, drive or heat their homes. But unfortunately, we do do all those. Or fortunately, we do all those things because they are necessities. The kind of sub number that I tend to look at, Isabel. Well, of course, I look at core inflation. Everybody sort of sucks their pencils or their pens on the telly and says, "Oh, core inflation, Gov." There's still a big problem. I look at the producer price index, and the producer price index is the main reason why I've been able to say in previous months inflation is going to come down more than we think. And pretty much for the last 2 months it has, because producer prices, the cost of the inputs that firms need to provide the goods and services they provide us, producer price inflation has collapsed from April, May and June. I haven't looked at the producer price index for July. I will in a moment, and we'll come back to it, I'm sure, later in the programme. But some measures of producer price inputs, Isabel, were actually negative last month, were negative in June. And that brings us full circle. Prices actually going down, not going up less quickly, actually going down. Right. And so negative producer price inflation is a kind of good bellwether, because that tells you there are price reductions in the pipeline that competitive companies will want to pass on in order to try and regain market share.
That's good to know.
So this is much better than we thought, but it's not enough of a reduction, I think, to stop another interest rate rise later this month.
Look, we're out of time. I'm being yelled at, as you can imagine. You know how this game works, but I still want to ask you one quick question.
Oh, you devil.
I do. As you said, a lot of our viewers and listeners will like interest rates higher. It's good for pensions, it's good for savings. However, we were desperate to grow the economy. Yeah. And it's very bad for that.
Isabel's instinct at the top was completely right. Most people, certainly of working age, will want lower interest rates. Young families who mortgaged themselves to get their home so they could raise a family with some kind of dignity. 2 or 3 years ago, they will have taken out a mortgage. Those deals now expiring, the rates they face going up from literally 1 or 2% to 7 or 8%, potentially ruinous. They will be clinging on. We're talking about millions of households, hundreds of thousands of households every month are having to come off 5, 3 and 2 year fixed rate deals that were much lower. They will be happy that this inflation number is low, but I'm afraid I can't say to them this means that interest rates won't rise again later this month.
Liam,
almost nailed on they will rise, but hopefully the peak won't be much higher than 5.5 or 5.75%.
Definitely gobby, but definitely informed. Liam Halligan, always good to see you.
I'll put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah.